Sanctum Sanctorum, and it is such an amazing Lego set. It's definitely one of the best Marvel sets of this year, which I know isn't like a tall ask. However, one thing that really lets me down is the minifigure selection, and I know I'm not the only person to talk about this. In comparison to the actual build of the set, it definitely feels like it's lacking, which is a pretty common occurrence for a Lego set. However, I feel like there are so many things that could have been done that could have just made it so much better and just ultimately made it the perfect set. And since the minifigures for me have always been such a major thing in my sets, I thought I would sit down today and show you some minor upgrades as well as a little bit of Photoshop in order to fix the Sanctum minifigures and really create one of the best Marvel sets of all time. So starting off, we have Doctor Strange. And firstly, I mean, I've had a couple of complaints with this Doctor Strange minifigure ever since they revealed him last year in the Spider-Man No Way Home sets. And I mean, one of the main complaints I've had is that the cape is like bright red. To me, Doctor Strange's cape should be more of like a dark red, a deeper red. Like this to me just feels a little bit too vibrant. I'm also not a huge fan of the torso and leg printing being like quite enlarged and quite blurry. However, I think as a whole, it's fine. But one thing that I really want to change is Doctor Strange's cape. I love the mold, but unfortunately they don't do a dark red version of this. So instead, I'm going to revert back to regular Lego style capes and make it dark red. Now, in order to do this, one thing you could do is take Wanda's cape from the CMF figure, as it was a nice dark red. However, as far as I'm aware, there is no dark red sort of neck piece, which Doctor Strange most certainly has. So instead, I'm actually going to go down the custom route and ended up buying some custom dark red capes from Minifig Capes for You. Now, these don't quite hit the same like Lego dark red, but I feel like just as a standalone minifigure, it works still way much better. It's not as vibrant, which really is like the main problem that we're fixing here. So I'll swap these out and I'll show you what he looks like. So then here is Doctor Strange with the dark red cape, and to me this just looks a lot cleaner. I really like this cape mold and I think it works great to express the cape as a character, but again, it is far too bright and also just makes Doctor Strange look a little too cartoony for my liking. Now I know, Lego purists, you're probably going to get really mad at me for this, but personally I would much prefer to use custom pieces and have a minifigure look super, super, super good. I mean, this to me is a really nice, elegant version of the Doctor Strange minifigure, and I think especially in an 18 plus set like the Sanctum Sanctorum, I think those classic capes just suit him a lot nicer. Next up, let's talk about Iron Man. Now, personally, I think this sort of helmet design, I mean, it's a lot closer sort of accurately representing how Iron Man's helmet looks in nanotech, but to me, these helmets are just so flat and lifeless that I really want to swap it out. Now, there are two sort of ways that I feel like you can do this. You could ultimately just grab the older Iron Man suit minifigure and just completely just like replace him in the set, or what I personally feel like is slightly better is just swapping out the helmets, because personally I much prefer the new torso design. It's a little bit more refined, there's a little bit more detail, and I really feel like the graphic designers did do a pretty nice and neat upgrade on that torso of the minifigure. It's just I personally don't like the helmets, and you might think it works a lot better, and I mean shape wise I kind of feel like it does, but it just feels really lifeless compared to the old one. So what I'm going to do is just simply swap out Tony Stark's helmet and call it a day. This is such a minor one, and really at the end of the day is a personal preference thing, so just do what suits you. Next up, we have Spider-Man, and man, I really didn't want to include him in this video, but when I saw the color of that suit, I knew I just had to. Now, I've heard a lot of praise for this Spider-Man minifigure. I mean, overall, the detail is immaculate. I love the arm printing, especially on this minifigure. I think it's fantastic. The boot printing, the hip printing, the torso printing. Personally, I still think the eyes are a little big for this suit, but really that's the least of my worries, because this is actually a change that I have done before, and it pains me to do it on this minifigure considering this was a brand new entire redesign. And that is changing the color of the blue to a much more vibrant blue. Now, here's the version that I did of the sort of older style Stark suit, and to me, this just looks a lot more accurate. I mean, his suit definitely did look a little bit darker in Civil War, but considering, I mean, at least this minifigure is set off Infinity War, I really feel like the brighter suit would have been so much better, and considering we just did an entire redesign in order for him to be in this set, I feel like it was the perfect opportunity, and honestly, this is one of the minifigures that infuriates me most, I think, in this set. As gorgeous as the minifigure is on its own, he's really not that accurate, and this blue would have fit him so much nicer. Next up is Ebony Maw, and man, this minifigure had a huge downgrade. There is one thing that I do like about him though, and that is the flesh tone of him. I much prefer them using the light bluish grey on the head and hands. I think it looks far more accurate and overall looks really good. I think the torso design as well is really great, but unlike the one in 2018, he doesn't have leg printing. He's also missing a lot of that detail, I think, on the front hand of the face. I mean, the back of his head to me is a really big upgrade. I love the hair design overall. It looks a lot more detailed, a lot less creepy and straggly than the 2018 one. When you put them side by side, I feel like you can really see what I mean there. But when it comes to the front of their faces, I think that 2018 one wins. And while I can't really have that head in a grey version with the back of the head, one thing that I do want to do is actually take the legs off the 2018 minifigure and just add it to the newer version. I mean, in an ideal world, this face would be on here as well, and he would just be looking really creepy and like scary and more Squidward-like than I feel like we got with the newer version. But that's not a change, unfortunately, that I am physically able to do unless I sort of Photoshop it like Spider-Man here. But for now, I'm just going to swap over the legs. The only thing that really annoys me about it is that they're a lot more bright and sort of lighter, using whites and grays on the hip, which definitely does not match the torso as well, but it gives him that really nice leg printing. Another thing you could always do as well is swap out these hands and make them grey and put the head on the newer one and just like basically head and hand swap the figures around. But I mean, I don't think it's entirely necessary. But for those who at least wanted to know what that looks like, here it is. I just haven't swapped out the hands. And rounding out our Infinity War figures, of course, we have Wong/Wongers, and I really feel like the prime and ideal thing to do in this situation is really take Bricktober Wong with this really weird printed but nice printed tile and just swap him out and have that much more detailed minifigure. But there's one small issue with doing that, and that's the fact that that minifigure is really expensive, and unless you have that Bricktober pack or are willing to fork out a lot of money, that's the ideal version, but that's really expensive, so we're just gonna forget that that exists, but highly recommend. Though admittedly, I much prefer the new Wong's face, so even if you did buy the expensive Wong minifigure, I feel like if you swapped out the heads, you would have a much better looking character. To me, this is prime Wong, however, that is really expensive, so I'll show you something else you can do instead. Now with Wong, as you can probably tell, the unfortunate thing that he is missing is leg printing. And I don't mean like side leg printing like the Bricktober pack had. I mean just some front leg printing really would have been nice. So while it technically doesn't match and this is from a different pair of robes, I'm going to take the version of Wong that we got from the Gargantos showdown and give him these legs just so that there's a little bit of detailing on there. I mean, personally to me, when I look at photos of Wong from Infinity War, I feel like his robes were closer to purple than blue anyways. So, I mean, one thing you could do is just like give him these legs, which, you know, kind of don't look that great, but at least it's, I guess, a slight step up. Or the other thing you could do is just take the hair off the Gargantos showdown Wong and call it a day. I mean, part of me thinks that they should have just done that in the set anyway, now that I'm thinking about it, because yeah, definitely looking at these set images, his robes look way more purple to me. I don't know if that's just me. Second to Spider-Man for the title of minifigure that hurts me and upsets me the most in this set, of course, has to go to Wanda, aka the Scarlet Witch. I mean, like a lot of people, Wanda is my favorite character. In fact, I'm wearing a Scarlet Witch t-shirt right now. Now, there are some really great things that they did with Wanda in this set. I mean, firstly is that printed hair/crown piece. I much prefer the design of this to the one that they did in the CMF. I'm really glad that they did it. And I mean, another thing you could do is even just like put that hairpiece on the CMF version if you wanted to upgrade that particular minifigure. I really feel like it just adds a lot of really nice detailing and makes her look so much better. Another great thing about the Sanctum Sanctorum Wanda is the fact that they gave her a new headpiece with much more darker eyebrows. To me, this feels a little bit more accurate. I've always seen Wanda as one that had like light hair and like kind of darker eyebrows, so the fact that they went through and fixed that as well as giving her a much more angrier face was a really welcome change for me. The torso design as well is excellent, and personally I don't really mind that there's not printed arms, as cool as that would have been, but the main thing to me is that there was no skirt piece and there was no leg printing. So first things first, I'm going to take the legs off my CMF Wonder and I'm going to throw them on her. I mean, you could even add like, I guess, the Power Blast pieces if you really wanted to sort of zhuzh up this Wonder a little bit more. And then the next thing I'm going to do is again take a custom cape piece. In that same order for the Doctor Strange capes, I ordered like a bunch of other cape pieces, including some skirt pieces for Wanda. Firstly, I grabbed one for Endgame Wanda, and then I thought while I was there, I should probably grab one for Sanctum Wanda too, because I feel like the skirt piece just really adds so much more to her. There's a lot of scenes with Wanda levitating or flying and her skirts flapping in the wind, and I really feel like having one of those pieces was such, again, a missed opportunity for this set. I can see a lot of people then buying that Wanda figure, and overall, just adding those two things really adds a lot to this minifigure design. Personally, I think it would have been fantastic for them to bring those CMF legs back and put them on this minifigure, but more so, again, I just think having that skirt piece would have been excellent. However, if you are a Lego purist and you don't want to buy a custom skirt like me, and I guess you want to have it in more of that accurate dark red, you could always shell out the money to get the one from the Civil War airport battle. However, that is a really expensive piece. I mean, these custom ones were just a couple of dollars each. I highly, highly, highly recommend them. Next up is Sinister Strange, though I feel like to really tell that he's Sinister Strange, I should probably rotate his head around. And really, I overall think this minifigure was fantastic. There's not a lot that I could really complain about with the minifigure design. And honestly, until I saw Mini Superheroes today give him a different hairpiece, I thought he was perfect. So I'm going to do exactly what he did and take his advice and sort of inspiration and take over my, unfortunately, quite expensive Gellert Grindelwald minifigure from the Harry Potter CMF series. And I'm going to take this hairpiece off him with those grey stripes and just add it to Sinister Strange. I actually don't know how much this hairpiece is. I can't imagine it's very cheap considering that minifigure was a one of sort of 60 box situation, but I think this hairpiece really adds a lot, and honestly, it's something I kind of forgot about, but once I was reminded, I didn't want to look at this minifigure without the hairpiece again. It just really adds a lot to me. It makes him look even creepier as well, and it's just those little details that I really feel like bring a minifigure together. Going on to Zombie Strange, and again, I think this minifigure is fantastic. I didn't really think that there was much else you could do. However, in a lot of the photos of zombie Doctor Strange or undead Doctor Strange, I feel like his hair was really scruffy and again, is missing those like really nice white and grey pieces to the hair. So what I'm actually going to do is take my Doctor Strange from the original Sanctum Sanctorum sort of playset and put that more dog trainer scruffy looking hair on zombie Doctor Strange. Do I think this is entirely necessary? No. Do I think it's going to add a lot to the minifigure? Honestly, I don't know yet. I haven't actually tried this out until right now. Yeah, honestly, part of me wants to say yes. I think this does look a little bit better. It's still not as messy and like scruffy, but I feel like this was another great option. And having those highlights to match the regular Doctor Strange minifigure in this set, I think overall is a lot nicer and just makes everything feel a little bit more consistent. Lastly, we have Mordo, and honestly, I think this minifigure is fantastic. There's nothing I really want to change. The only thing that I would have loved to have seen from him is a bit of leg printing, but even without it, I think he's perfectly fine. I think this is like probably one of the most solid minifigures out of the entire set. And then just for the sake of it, I thought I would show you some other minifigures that I feel like would have been excellent inclusions and probably should have been included in the set. And the first of them is sort of tracksuit Tony Stark. Honestly, I would have preferred him to be in the set than the Iron Man minifigure. I just think it sort of represents the Sanctum a lot better considering Tony just got pulled from his run around Central Park. To me, it just feels like a little bit neater, a little bit more accurate to the scene that involves the Sanctum. And then of course, the next one is America Chavez, and not this version of America Chavez. Ideally, my upgraded one with like a dark brown Hermione Granger looking hair, but even then, I feel like America Chavez probably should have been included in the Sanctum Sanctorum set considering this is sort of another Multiverse of Madness set. I don't think the set necessarily loses a lot of value not having her in it, but I mean, just to make this set even better, I'm gonna throw these guys in too. So there are all my Sanctum minifigure upgrades, and to me, the ones that make the biggest amount of difference are certainly Wanda, I mean SpiderMan as well, even though unfortunately I'm not able to have that in person, and then the regular Doctor Strange. That cape, I mean, it just feels a little too kiddie for me, and I think for an 18+ display set, especially one that I personally will be putting on my display or in like my city lineup, I really love that more slick and clean look, not to mention the dark red color. There are some that don't necessarily add too much more to the minifigures, but more just slightly improve them. And even then, to me, just looking at this group all together now, even with the 2 extra minifigure inclusions, it just makes the set feel so much better and really, in my eyes, makes it almost perfect. Even without these upgrades though, I absolutely love the Sanctum Sanctorum. I think it's a fantastic set and I cannot wait to finish building it and just seeing it all together. It looks fantastic. If you haven't got it yet or are planning to get it for Christmas, I highly recommend it, and I will leave affiliate links for the set in the description down below. But if you guys enjoyed watching this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel down below. And until next time guys, I'll see you later.